Hello everybody, my name is Necroxis, and time for a video on two subjects, and I'm pretty sure, no matter who you are, you're gonna be pissed off at me, and I'm gonna hear about it in the comments below, so just preparing myself now before I even begin. I'm here with my unkempt, unshaven face. It is like 4 in the morning. I was planning on recording this video later today to put out tomorrow, but I decided, fuck it, let's just do it now. Because I was talking about it on Twitter, I was planning on doing a video on these topics, and since I was already talking about it, I just had all the thoughts rumbling around in my brain, so here we go! We're going to be talking about two things, as you can tell from the title below. The first is Nostalrius, the private vanilla WoW server that Blizzard shut down this week, and the second is Heroes of the Dorm. So, I feel like people might have a little bit of a misconception about how I look at Blizzard things. I feel like, just because I've been criticizing Blizzard a lot in the past, that I'm one of those people who will always come out and criticize Blizzard, basically no matter what they're doing, and I kind of went on a little bit of a rant on my Twitter about people who act like this. And I think that as a community, and I know I have a very, very small subscriber base, so I don't consider myself even basically part of the community. I'm just some small guy, subscriber-wise at least, who just yells about stuff and then talks about things that they like. But I feel like as a community of WoW fans and Blizzard game fans, we need to have, I think we really need kind of like a deliverance moment where we need to demand a higher standard from our big content creators. And content creators are people who I would say focus almost exclusively, or at least a lot, on Blizzard stuff. I'm not going to name any names, because I generally don't do that, although I can't think of maybe one case where I was going on about something and I brought up 2 or 3 YouTubers that do this, but I'm not going to name names when I say this next statement, but I feel like we've gotten to a point now in our community, and this is before I'm even talking about the topic, by the way, so I want to just get this out there now and then launch into my whole Nostalrius thing. But I feel like the big name YouTubers or content creators or streamers or whatever, all of those are included in this. I feel like the vast majority of them basically just parrot what the other ones are saying. They basically yell the same opinions back at each other and then pat each other on the back for how much they're all in agreement, when it sounds like they're all just screaming the same thing together. Like it's like a cacophony of just fucking blah, and it's all, I guess if it was the same, it wouldn't be a cacophony, but whatever. It's just people yelling the same shit at each other, and then being like, yeah, I see the community, we really all feel this specific way about this topic, right? And I feel like we need to have a higher standard, because I feel like lately, most of the big name content creators are just automatically negative on Blizzard, no matter what they do. It's because they were burned, rightfully so, on Warlords of Draenor. And coincidentally, or maybe in my opinion not so much, these are all the people who came out and attacked people like me, not me personally, but people like me who had the opinions about Warlords early on. Once again, if you're a new subscriber, I was criticizing Warlords for all of the problems that people now admit are abundant. I was criticizing them, Warlords, for that. Basically since the first wave of the alpha, because I got in the very first wave. And for most of the alpha, most of the beta, even for like up until maybe patch 6.1 on live, I had people just telling me like, Necro, you're just so negative, and all you do is just hate what Blizzard does now because you didn't like the end of Siege of Orgrimmar, and blah 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 blah. So it's those people who went after people like me who were criticizing Warlords. It's the same people who pretty much unanimously came out saying, flying shouldn't be in the game. By the way, most of them have changed their tune now, and we're happy that flying got added. But it's these people, and I feel like they're always negative, no matter what Blizzard does. And I can understand being upset that the product and the company that you've loved in the past are doing stuff you don't love anymore. I certainly feel that way. There are plenty of videos on this channel of me criticizing things Blizzard have done, and rightfully so, I would say. I mean, at least for me, I'm the one that fucking made those opinions, but I feel like we seem to have lost the idea of nuance. Like, the fact that we should take each specific case specifically, and not just say like, oh, because Blizzard fucked up on Warlords of Draenor, that automatically, when they took down Nostalrius, that is automatically a bad thing. And it feels like a lot of people do that, like the vast majority of the content creators in the Warcraft community. It doesn't matter what Blizzard does, they're always just bad. So let me just say, I think that I'm not like that, and I think this video is going to demonstrate that, because I have two topics where I'm defending Blizzard on one thing, and then criticizing them on something else. And also, in my past, I've criticized them on a lot of stuff, but even I would say in Legion now, after all the shit that I said negatively about Warlords, I can still admit that there are a lot of good stuff that I like in Legion. So I feel like I am above. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, but I'm saying we need more people to do that, to have a nuanced outlook on things. Not just say because I hated what Blizzard did with X, that means Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, blah, blah. Forever, for infinity, is also going to be bad right from the outset. And in my opinion, that's how I feel this topic has gone with Nostalrius. So, like 7 minutes into the video, let's finally talk about Nostalrius. So, Nostalrius, I think that's how you pronounce it, is a private vanilla WoW server, which means that they tried to recreate vanilla WoW, or pre-Burning Crusade, the first iteration of Warcraft, before Burning Crusade came out. People nowadays typically call it vanilla. They tried to recreate vanilla WoW as faithfully as possible as it was to when vanilla was actually live. And Nostalrius apparently got very, very popular, allegedly, according to their own numbers, which I don't know if I would actually take as true or not based on the whole hullabaloo about this situation. But their reported numbers that they've come out and claimed is that they apparently had, over 800,000 registered users for their private server. They claim that there were like 150,000 active players. And in this whole debate, defenders of Nostalria and criticizers of Blizzard have come out and said, there are like 15,000 people at a time on our server. And so Blizzard, last week, I believe lawyers representing Blizzard sent a letter to the company hosting the Nostalrius server, basically saying, intending, like, I believe what it's called is an intent for what's the word? They were intending to sue because of copyright infringement. And so basically Nostalrius had to shut down. And whew, did that explode on the internet to absolutely nobody's surprise. You had people claiming Blizzard spitting in the face of their community. I had people saying they're spitting in the face of all of their players, even people who didn't play on Nostalrius, even people who didn't even know about Nostalrius. They're still spitting in their face because they went after this group of players who were hosting this private server of vanilla WoW. And if it wasn't abundantly clear already, I am totally on Blizzard's side about this. Originally, I was pretty neutral in the whole argument. I didn't care that much. I didn't play on Nostalrius. I have always been of the opinion, if you've listened to my content or watched it for any length of time, I actually talk about this pretty frequently. In my opinion, vanilla WoW was great for its time. That asterisk of for its time is important. It was great for its time, but I personally believe, by comparison now, ignoring, and some people won't be able to ignore this, but in my opinion, you're able to distinguish the problems of Warlords from just how the base game is now. And if you compare the base game's mechanics and how the classes work and how the talent system is and how raiding is and how PvP is, although I don't PvP that much, so that's probably lowest on my list. If you compare all of those things now, and in Legion, how it's going to be in Legion, to how it was in vanilla, I have always been of this opinion that it blows vanilla out of the water. I was one of the few people who was defending Cataclysm before I even started making YouTube on forums and stuff, because for as much as everyone was talking about how much they hated Dragon Soul after the fact, nobody was bringing this shit up during 4.1 and 4.2. Some of them were in 4.1 with the rehashing of Zul'Gurub, even though it's a whole fucking new instance, but some people were trying to say it was rehashed content and blah blah blah. But I was always one of the people who defended Cataclysm, because Cataclysm finally revamped the old, busted user-unfriendly way that vanilla WoW worked. Things such as attunement quest chains taking like weeks and weeks and months, having to grind for resistance gear, which did nothing but it was just a big giant time sink. Raiding being so exclusive. I believe Blizzard, one of the things they've most popularly come out and said about raiding back in those days was, I think it was less than 1% of the player base actually got to see Naxxramas when it was in vanilla. And that's why they brought it back in Wrath of the Lich King. I'm not going to get into that whole, they just copy-pasted Wrath and scaled everything up, but blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, they basically came out and said, how can we justify creating such a resource commitment to something that tens of thousands out of like millions and millions of players would see? And I was like, all right, I agree with you. I've been playing since vanilla. I started about a month and a half before the AQ gates opened, if you're curious. I've been basically playing the entire time. I've dropped off here and there. I dropped off during the long wait between Mists and Warlords, but I haven't been subscribed consistently since then. But that's due to other issues. But my point here is, I've always been someone who has said that vanilla was good for its time, but by comparison now, it's not good. Like, if vanilla was released today, it would fail. And you know how we have a perfect opportunity, well, my brain farted there. You know how we have a perfect opportunity to explore this idea? WildStar in Carbine Studios was created by a bunch of vanilla WoW developers and other people, but a lot of vanilla WoW developers who had left Blizzard created Carbine Studios and put out WildStar. And WildStar has failed! It has failed horribly! Between the attunements that take like months and months and months, once again, rating being super duper exclusive, it had all of the same basic, at its core, how it felt. It felt like vanilla WoW in the current age, and it failed. It failed horribly. There are still people playing it, and they've gone free to play, but it, by all important measurements, failed. And so, I feel like a lot of people who are complaining about this topic, first of all, didn't even play in vanilla, so they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. They're hearing idiots going around saying, vanilla WoW was the greatest, vanilla WoW was the greatest. So you can't see my hand, I'm doing the jack-off motion. Vanilla WoW was the greatest, everyone sucks, the game sucks now, vanilla WoW. I feel like a lot of people are just hearing this and never actually played vanilla, and then are just going on around and repeating it. Once again, to go back to the content creator YouTube audience thing, because they're mad at things that Blizzard has done now. So therefore, when they hear a criticism of Blizzard, however faulty that it might be, they listen to it, they agree, and they repeat it. And so let's go through a couple of reasons why I think Blizzard was in their right to take down Nostalrius. Number one, legally, it's fully within their right to do this. That should be the end of this topic, and I should have to move on. But because people just apparently ignore this fact, let's keep on going. Like I said, Blizzard's fully in their right to take down a private group's hosting of their intellectual property that they're giving away for free. It's free. It was free to play on Nostalrius. You didn't have to buy the base game. You didn't have to pay a subscription. The people behind Nostalrius took Blizzard's intellectual property, another private company's intellectual property, rehosted it with a bunch of changes to it to revert it back to an older state, or I'm not sure how I want to pronounce that, but they took it back and they reverted it to an older state of the product, and they just gave it away, basically. They didn't charge anything for it. They didn't charge a subscription. Now you can sit there and say, they didn't charge anything, so what's the problem? It's still someone else's intellectual property. I can't go across my room, grab a Harry Potter novel, write a bunch of storyline notes in the margins, and change a bunch of the story, reprint that, and then just start giving it away. That's not okay. I would get a cease and desist immediately upon anybody related to J.K. Rowling, her lawyers, or the publishing company. The second anyone heard about this, I would get a cease and desist immediately under threat of lawsuit. It's the exact same thing. You can't take somebody else's intellectual property and just rehost it with changes and say, I'm not charging for it, so what's the big deal? It's still illegal. And people are just ignoring the illegality of this entire situation because apparently vanilla is vanilla. They're just blatantly ignoring piracy because it's vanilla WoW and some small group of people want to go back to that. So that just means it's okay. It's not okay. It's theft. You're stealing someone's intellectual property. You can't do that. You just can't do that. Secondly, there has been a screenshot and some GIFs and some like short videos going around. I'm not going to show them here because I don't want to give them credit. One of the screenshots is like a bunch of people in Ironforge, like a lot of players, like thousands of players in Ironforge, and it's juxtaposed to a screenshot now of Ironforge that is basically empty, and there's usually like a caption below it that says like, "There's no interest in this, huh?" This is such a fallacious argument. You can't compare one server that you have to play on. There are not multiple Nostalrius servers. There's one. If you want to play on Nostalrius, you have to play on the Nostalrius server. There's one. You can't compare one server's capital, because if you played in vanilla, Ironforge was basically the Alliance capital. It got switched to Stormwind, but in vanilla, Burning Crusade was like this for the most part as well, and vanilla kind of changed it to Stormwind. But in vanilla and parts of Burning Crusade, well, I guess it technically wouldn't be BC because BC was Shattrath. So in vanilla, Ironforge was the Alliance's capital. You can't sit there and compare one server screenshot of Ironforge to live version where Ironforge isn't even like the main player congregation area. B, we're in between expansions right now, so player participation won't even be at its peak. And C, you're comparing one server to a bunch of servers. There are over 200 servers for Alliance players alone on live version. You can't compare one server you have to play on to another single server that's not the capital during off times in the game's life and sit there and go, I'm making a point about how many people are playing it. No! There are millions of people still playing World of Warcraft right now. Having 15 or even 20 or even 100,000 people, and it's not even close to that, having even 100,000 people doesn't prove anything. It proves you're being disingenuous. It's ridiculous, and I've been seeing it posted over and over and over, and every time I see it, I have basically like a copy-paste response to it. I've been just posting it everywhere that I can see it, because people are posting this shit, and other people who really aren't that informed on the topic are going like, hey, yeah, that's a good point, and they don't even, whether or not they're actively ignoring it or they just don't know, they're accepting this fallacious, ridiculous argument on its face, when it takes just like a couple of seconds of critical thinking to just completely destroy that argument. So, furthermore, Blizzard has come out repeatedly and stated why they don't like vanilla servers. Vanilla servers have a presentation of the game that private servers, at least, they present the game in a form, in a state that it's not anymore. And they don't want to keep rehashing the same, rehashing is not the right word, but I know people are going to say, but they're rehashing the garrison system for Legion. We're fucking talking about a different topic here. I agree the Legion garrison system looks very similar, and I'll probably make a video criticizing that. But Blizzard has come out and said they don't want to just stay on the same idea and just like foster nostalgia, because the game's not developing. They want to develop the game. And if people are going around seeing Nostalrius and looking at it and saying, this is World of Warcraft now. All these time sinks and these resistance grindings and these attunements or resistance gear grindings and these attunements and everything taking fucking forever to do and all these time sinks. Wow, that's vanilla. That's World of Warcraft, huh? Ugh. That's not how the live game is. They don't want a false perception of their game. And that's perfectly within their right. It's their fucking intellectual property. I'm probably going to have to state this a bunch of times before this whole topic in Nostalrius is over. It's their intellectual property. They get to choose how it's presented. Once again, I can't take a Harry Potter novel, rip out 50 pages in the middle, and then reprint it and give it out to people, because they'll be like, what the fuck? There's a big jump in the story here. I don't like this. That's me infringing on their intellectual property and presenting it as something that it's not. That is what Nostalrius is. You can't do that. That's illegal. Alright, so, my next point on this list. I think a lot of people are blaming Blizzard when the actual fault is a lot of popular WoW streamers right now. People who have publicly come out of their criticisms of the game. Not gonna name names, but are the most popular WoW streamer right now pretty frequently streamed his playtime on Nostalrius, publicly talked about Nostalrius, publicly encouraged people to go play Nostalrius, when you have the most popular fucking streamer in the community saying, go to this illegal thing and play it, did they not think that Blizzard would be like, wow, we probably should nip this in the bud because these people are stealing our intellectual property, misrepresenting our game, and they're doing it for free. We should probably shut that down. If you want to blame anybody, blame the people who are doing that. Blame the YouTubers who are talking about it. Blame the streamers who are showing the fucking server and the gameplay from vanilla on their streams with tens of thousands of people. Don't blame Blizzard for defending their intellectual property to be displayed and shown in the way that they want because it's theirs and they own it. Another topic that I think... Anyway, moving on. I was going to make a point, but I don't feel like it's a valid one. Another thing that's really convenient is that Nostalrius runs on a donation system to keep the servers up. And I was looking on their forums after I heard somebody make this next argument that I'm going to make. And from what I could tell, I didn't look that much into it, but from what I could tell, this is a correct statement I'm about to say. Nostalrius was failing to make its next payment on its next month's server charge. So it seems really convenient now, with Blizzard coming in and saying, you need to stop this, that now they're going, oh, Blizzard, look at what you've done! Oh, poor Blizzard! It's really, really convenient, in my opinion, that they were pretty much begging people to go and pay for their next server payment, while also then this happens. They didn't have the money to upkeep the server. And then they were like, oh, Blizzard, look what they did! I mean, Blizzard did take it down. I'm not saying there's some conspiracy there. But they sure took advantage of a thing to, like, foster goodwill. And that just doesn't sit right with me. Next, we're almost done with this topic, I believe. Next, I think this is one of the more important topics. I'm saving the two most important ones, in my opinion, for the end. People either don't realize they forgot, or worst of all, they're deliberately leaving out the fact that all of these changes were made because of player feedback. You want to know why attunements went away? You want to know why raids were more accessible? Do you want to know why a lot more people could raid? Do you want to know why looking for group and looking for raid was adding into the game? Do you want to know how PvP was more accessible? Do you want to know why the talent system was changed? Because players fucking complained! People seem to just act like Blizzard one day just showed up and was like, we're changing everything, nobody likes it, but fuck you, we're Blizzard. They got so much feedback. I've been playing since vanilla. Despite what everyone circle jerks out about now, people fucking hated sitting in Ironforge for 2 hours trying to fucking find a Skullomance group to get their attunement or get their Paladin epic mount quest done. People didn't want to sit in Ironforge doing jack shit, just spamming trade, because there was no looking for group system. People didn't want to do that, and guess what? They changed it. They added a looking for group system in Wrath of the Lich King. To every change, raiding, attunements, PvP, fucking talent system, looking for group. All of that was added because people asked them to change the game. So I feel like this is such a disingenuous statement to go, look at Nostalrius. This is how the game was meant to be played, and Blizzard has fucked up the live version. Bitches, even in Warlords of Draenor, they were trying to respond to player feedback. In my opinion, they did it in the wrong way, but the vast majority of the time when they change stuff in World of Warcraft, they do it because people ask them to change the game because they don't like it. Come on! I don't... Hit my mic there. I haven't seen anybody in this conversation about Nostalrius make that point. The game changed because people wanted it to change. And finally, probably the most... Hold on, water break. Probably the most ridiculous argument is people pretending this is some big consumer rights issue. People, like I said before, acting like piracy isn't piracy because it's vanilla WoW, and people have this romanticized, nostalgic image in their mind of what vanilla WoW does. Suddenly, it just doesn't matter that people are stealing some other company's intellectual property, hosting it on their website, and giving it away for free. It's not a consumer rights issue because Blizzard went after a group of people who illegally stole their intellectual property and rehosted it. That's not a consumer's rights issue. It's not a consumer right issue. It's not an individual liberty issue if I go into Target and fucking try to steal a television and they catch me and I get arrested. If I turned around and went, oh, they're infringing on my personal liberty to steal from this store, I would get laughed out of a courtroom. I wouldn't even make it to a courtroom because it'd be so obvious that I would lose. I wouldn't want to spend the money to do so. You don't get to fucking turn around and say, Blizzard shut down this illegal thing. Oh, woe is me. They're going after their consumer base. No, they're going after fucking pirates who stole their shit and reposted their intellectual property, not even faithful to what they want it to be, but for free and for an old version of it. I literally had somebody tell me that defending Blizzard would mean that I'm okay with the government spying on private citizens. That's how fucking ridiculous the circle jerk around Nostalrius has gotten. People who have no fucking idea what they're even talking about, coming out and saying, this is a consumer rights issue. No, this is a theft issue. This is a piracy issue. This is an intellectual property ownership issue. And Nostalrius loses on every 3 of those counts. They do. Sorry. I know some people are upset that it got shut down, but you don't get to just make up reality because you're mad. Because you got caught. Because you're the child whose stolen toy got taken away. You're not toddlers. Most of you are grown-ass adults. You should probably start acting like it. Especially those of you who are content creators and are fucking big names in the community. I was almost about to start naming people there, and I stopped myself. I don't want to do it. I'm not that person who calls out people like that. There's been one exception where me and Howie and Dunn and Rioris made 2 videos about something, but that's a special case. Because that person was actively stealing and blah, 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 blah. But, I mean... Sorry, think about that topic and my brain farts because how stupid it was. This is not a consumer's right, not a consumer rights issue. It's just not. It's a theft issue. Like I said, I know that even despite spending 25 minutes or 20 minutes talking about this, I'm still gonna have people say, but Necroxis, they took down this thing that people liked. That fucking happens all the time. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it wrong. You have to look at the nuance of the situation to get back to nuance. And the facts are, they stole another company's intellectual property, rehosted it on their own, on a private server, charged nothing for it and no subscription, and are representing the game as something that it's not right now. 4 specific reasons that Blizzard were perfectly valid in going after Nostalrius. And you know what, like I said at the beginning, I was pretty neutral on the whole idea. That was until I saw the fucking just blind, nostalgic nerd rage about this, just going after Blizzard and hating them because of something that they're perfectly within their legal rights to do. Now you can sit there and say, Necroxis, it's in their legal rights, but is it right? Is it a right thing that they should shut down Nostalrius? And you know what? I think that it is. I think that if another group wants to do this, even leaving out the illegality of it, it's not right. It's not a right thing to do. People, you need to move on past your nostalgia. If you want to play another kind of game from your childhood, you can go ahead and pop it in. Ocarina of Time isn't still being updated, so that when you go to pop it in, there's a whole bunch of new shit. Ocarina of Time was made, it was completed, and it was done. World of Warcraft is an MMORPG, which by its very nature changes and evolves and adds new things. You cannot like those, and that's fine. I dislike lots of stuff of Warlords of Draenor. Probably I dislike more stuff than I liked. But I can't sit there and say, well, that means it is my consumer right to be able to steal their intellectual property and go play vanilla because I don't like this thing. Either grow up and move on and stop playing, or, I mean, that's pretty much it. You can't be doing this. And it's like such a, I feel like it's one of those things that a lot of people who aren't, like, intellectually adults yet, even if they're like 20, 30, 40 years old, like intellectually they haven't crossed that milestone of when something you don't like something anymore, especially when it was a thing from your childhood, a nostalgic thing that you have warm, fuzzy feelings in your heart. And I have that for vanilla. I loved vanilla for all of its faults. It was some of the best times I had. Vanilla, Burning Crusade, and Wrath of the Lich King. Whether it was raiding, or it was role-playing. Role-playing was a big one for me in Burning Crusade and Wrath. Or it was just not knowing that much about the game and the universe yet. I had all of those warm, fuzzy feelings, but you know what? I grew the fuck up. I realized that if a thing changed, I stopped buying it, or playing it, or watching it, or reading it, or eating it, or what the fuck ever. You can't keep holding on to a 12-year-old game and say, I want the game to be what it was 12 years ago. You can't do that. Blizzard was fully within their own rights, and I'm glad that they did it. I'm glad. People just seem to ignore the fact that, well, I should say people are now saying, like, some people have said they should have hired all these Nostalrius people and just created private servers. These people have no idea what it costs to run an MMORPG. They would have to pay for new servers, the upkeep of those servers, fixing all the bugs, because if they tried to just revert back to the vanilla source code, there were tons and tons of bugs. Nostalrius had something like, 20 or 30 people who worked on reverting the game back to vanilla over like a year? I believe Nostalrius was only a little bit over a year old. And they were still updating it. I was looking on their website. They're still doing fixes to the game. Blizzard would have to hire a bunch of people because they can't take it away from the new expansion, otherwise that will fucking never come out. It's already taken way too long as it is. They have to hire new people, new servers, server upkeep, new programmers, game masters, because World of Warcraft, whether or not you want to give Blizzard credit, there are always game masters online. There's never a time in World of Warcraft where you put in a ticket and just nobody responds. You might be put into a queue, but that's because the game masters are helping other people. There are always game masters on World of Warcraft. They would have to hire a bunch of game masters for full round the clock. And of course, they would probably have to make 1 or 2 or even 3 or 4 servers. Because for people saying like, oh, it's 15,000 people are playing at once. First of all, that number was reported after the announcement was made, when the maximum amount of people were online to complain, and it was at the peak. It was at the peak. It wasn't the average number of people online. And even if it was, Blizzard would never have one server with 15,000 people. It would be lagging. It would crash. Shit wouldn't work. The auction house wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to do quests. The fucking mods would be dead all the time. I don't think a lot of people know that in vanilla there were a lot less mobs across the whole world than there are now. The whole dynamic mob respawn system where if there are more people in an area, mobs will respawn faster, that didn't exist in vanilla. That came out of a criticism of vanilla and Burning Crusade. You'd be standing there for like an hour or more trying to kill fucking Hogger. People look at vanilla with these nostalgic lenses, and they just either ignore or don't even know about all of the problems vanilla had. Now, people like me and other of us who played vanilla just ignored because it was a new thing, and we were like enthralled by it. But we ignored a lot of the problems, and even then, we still talked and complained about them. I don't think people realize WoW got popular because they took the EverQuest model and they took out even more of the grinding shit. And that's just what Blizzard has always been doing. That's what they do for every game they put out. Heroes of the Storm, look at Dota or League of Legends. They took out a lot of the time shit. Granted, I don't like Heroes, and I think there's a lot of problems, but I can acknowledge that Heroes is faster than those other 2 games. Because they took it and they refined it in their mind and took out a lot of the waiting shit. Blizzard has always done this. They're doing it with Overwatch compared to Team Fortress or whatever other team-based shooter you could think of. It's ridiculous. And this is like one of those topics where, in my opinion, it was exactly how Warlords was. It's one of those topics during the Warlords Alpha that you're just not allowed to criticize. But in this case, you're not allowed to criticize Vanilla WoW. You're not allowed to defend Blizzard. Because Vanilla's like this sacred cash cow. Not a cash cow. This sacred cow that's just, it's perfect. There's no criticisms. If you don't like it, well, you're just a hater. Or blah, blah, blah. Whatever the fuck else, every other criticism is just dismissed with the wave of the hand. You're just never allowed to criticize it. And there are a lot of valid criticisms of Vanilla, most of which got removed because Blizzard was listening to player feedback. So, that's Nostalrius. I am completely on Blizzard's side for this, and that's all there is to it. I think I covered all my points I wanted to make. Let's see. Yep, that's it. So, let's talk about Heroes of the Dorm. And now, where in Nostalrius, I feel like people might have thought I would be defending the people who are pissed off. For Heroes of the Dorm, I think people might be like, I'm totally on board for it, but I hated it. I hated Heroes of the Dorm this year. Last year, they had a lot of these similar problems, but for some reason, and I don't know what it is, I can't put my finger on it, this year just was overall just worse in like every regard. I made a thread on this MMO champion, which I then had a mod lock, because you're not allowed to talk about Nuance again. People just fucking strawman all your shit, and they don't even listen to your argument, and they just bitch about shit that you never even said. But the title that I made was something to the effect of Heroes of the Dorm 2016 feels marketed and soulless. It felt like a thing that they were just doing to get attention for Heroes of the Storm. And of course, the cynical person in me, and the cynical answer is they are. But at least they used to put like a sugary coat over these things. And now it just seems like it's gone. And it was just a soulless event that was just a hardcore marketing event. And there was no charm. Even last year had charm. There was no charm. There was no Blizzard like touch. It was just, let's get into specifics. First of all, the all but abandonment of internet streaming rights to ESPN. This was the same last year, but this year ESPN's like streaming service was like worse. I don't remember having the same complaints that I had this year. The quality was terrible. By comparison, ESPN's thing had like a bunch of little knobs like in a bar saying like, this is how good quality your stream is, and it will use as much bandwidth as possible to get to that. I was always on full. I had the best quality possible. It still looked not even half as good as the high option on Twitch. And it went from like low, medium, high, and source. And source was the best quality option. It felt like you were watching. Source quality feels like you're sitting here with your controller watching the game on your screen as you're playing it. And the highest quality on ESPN's wasn't even as good as the option below that of high. And sure, that might sound like a first world problem, but when Blizzard abandoned like all streaming rights, because there was no streaming, they didn't stream it on their Blizz Heroes. They didn't stream it. If you were in America, you had to watch it either on ESPN on your TV. It was ESPN-U for the first day for the Final Four, which is like ESPN University Sports, and then it was on ESPN2 for the finals. And if you didn't have a cable subscription that you couldn't watch on TV, you had to have the cable subscription to watch it on streaming. If you didn't have it, you were fucked. You couldn't do anything. If you were in the US, at least. If you were outside the US, you had to watch it on YouTube, which is accessible to everybody. But if you were inside the US, you couldn't watch it. I had two specific people in my real life, friends of mine that I knew, who don't even really play Heroes of the Storm, but they saw the marketing for it because Blizzard marketed the fuck out of it like they do everything nowadays. They spend what it seems like more time and care on the marketing than the actual product. But they saw the marketing and they wanted to watch it, and they didn't have a subscription to cable, and they couldn't watch it at first. And inevitably, I just ended up finding a stream on Twitch, a stream that was streaming the ESPN stream, and I just sent them there to watch it. And it was like, imagine if you're looking through like an opaque glass, and then you have another opaque glass looking at a screen. That's how it was, because it was unclear, because it was a stream of a stream, and it was just, it wasn't good. And that's what I heard that from basically everybody. The quality wasn't good. Me personally, my stream was constantly lagging. It was resetting. At times it was getting stuck in loops and was like repeating the same like couple 30 seconds over and over again. And I have really, really fast internet. I have something like 90 down and like 24 up, but that doesn't matter. I have like 90 down, which is high. it's high for a private individual. And so it wasn't my internet, is my point. It wasn't good. Moving on, let's see, water break. Moving on, the UI that they made was absolutely terrible. Now, this isn't Blizzard's fault. This really isn't even ESPN's fault. This is apparently cable broadcasting rules, because one of the people at Blizzard behind the whole tournament came out and said, because Blizzard put out this video being like, look at our new UI system. It's a terrible, shitty little map with red blocks on it, and unlike the one we used for all of our other tournaments, you couldn't see the pictures of the character and where they were going. It was this little block of these little dots. Instead of the character's face or their model, it was a dot that represented them on this little mini map that was probably the size of like this. It was like right over here, like right over here, like the size of this. And like there was only like a little bar, like right down here, like about this big. Oh my god, my camera, like this big, probably like this here at the most. Sorry, my camera is inverted, so I'm like, oh shit. That's probably like this high at the most. And it barely displayed any information. And it's because apparently there are cable broadcasting rules that prevent too much information and too much color also showing up on the screen at one time. Apparently that's some kind of broadcasting rule for cable TV. So it's not Blizzard's fault, it's not ESPN's fault, but I think by tethering Heroes of the Dorm to a ESPN, this is the result you get. And this needs to be pointed out because it was not good. It was not good. Now getting to the worst things. There was this cringy, almost incessant, constant implication of esports being real sports. Esports are real sports. I'm not participating in the discussion of whether or not esports is real sports. I have no opinion on that. I don't even really care. But seeing Blizzard constantly beating this drum of esports is real sports, esports is real sports, it was fucking obnoxious. They had like ham-fisted references during the game to stuff like, this character is kind of like a lineman. It was like, what the fuck kind of commentary was that bullshit? Explain what the fuck you're talking about. Don't just say like, oh, because we're on ESPN, let's make a football reference. What the fuck? But there were interviews between like every fucking commercial break with like some of the cringiest people imaginable. And so it was kind of weird to me that they were pushing this we're a real sport angle, but then there's like I tweeted this out that somebody showed it to me. It was like Blizzard's mentality of thinking like, we're gonna make this a legitimate sport, and then cut to Heroes of the Dorm commercial where they're like, now we're gonna interview this guy named Gutslug, or they're playing the games and they're referring to players' names like Snickers or like Biggity fucking Boo or shit like that. It's like, how can you? It's just a really weird dichotomy where they're pretending to try to take this seriously, and then the point is. That's not a problem that there's a guy named Gutslug and Bibbidi fucking Bobbidi Boo or whatever people's names want to be. Or Jingle Hopper Schmidt or whatever the fuck name you want to be. You could name your name fucking Titty Ass Bitch Tits or something. I wouldn't give a shit. But because it's on ESPN, they're trying to pretend like these things, they just like blow by this. And there's like a mismatch. You can't be like, we're professional, but now let's cut to our interviewer Anna talking to fucking bitch tits cunt ass, and then that's their handle, and you're like, what the fuck? Like when I cut to the guy named Gutslug, I was like, what? It was right after the casters were talking about like sports. So I got to a point where I felt like the casters at this point would just turn into like those what movie is that? Finding Nemo. They had like the I believe, what were they? Pigeons that were just repeating like. They were like making a noise. I forget if they were saying something or they were just making noises. But that's what I felt like the casters had turned into. They're all just like, sports, those guys. We're real sports. What about, it's like a lineman. Sports, though. We're sports, right? Sports, ESPN. Sports. We're sports now. Sports. Heroes of the Storm, sports. And then they would like interview the parents and be like, ask questions like, how did you know, or how... So since when did you know your son would be a good team sports player? Sports! Like the casters were saying, like, anyone that questions whether esports is a real sport should watch the finals, because these athletes trained hard. It's like, could you make it any fucking more obvious? That's fine if you want to try and make it a real sport. Don't come out with a fucking paper on your face of fucking sports. You know, We're doing it in real time. Fuck it. We'll do it live. You can't be like, all right, let's come back to Anna. And then she's like, sports. Esports is a real sport. You gotta be more subtle than that. Holy fuck. I know that was kind of a stupid point. I acknowledge it, but it just fucking bothered me. It bothered me for like the whole tournament. But it wasn't until on ESPN that they really started pushing the angle. And now the worst, I like stuttered there because my brain was like, all right, you just went through a dumb topic. Now get to the serious one. So the thing that was like the most infuriating to me was, it's tied into the sports angle, but I think it's more serious. It's the appeal. It's the appeal to non-MOBA or non-Heroes of the Storm or non-video game players. And stop right there before you make your comment. I'm fine with the company doing that. A company would be stupid not to market their game to as many people as possible. But you don't try to appeal to a new demographic by ignoring, or at some places, what I feel like shitting on the old demographic. The casters dumbed down the game to such a level that it felt like they were talking to fucking 4-year-olds. There's a way to describe new mechanics, or describe mechanics at all, to people who don't play video games, while also trying to pretend that you're serious. A great example is, every time they were playing on, Sky Temple. Yeah, Sky Temple's the map. The one where you have to stand on the platform and the constructs come alive and you fight and it shoots at the towers. I swear to God, this is an exact quote that I heard, and I wrote it down because it was so fucking infuriating to me. Like white hot rage. You have to stand in that circle to get the lasers to shoot. You have to stand in the circles to get the lasers to shoot. Could you have a little bit more fucking respect for your game? To just say like, oh, players need to fight in this area to let the mechanic happen, which does this. That's not fucking complicated. Any fucking idiot who's watching and who might not know video games can understand, if you're within this boundary, this mechanic happens that is necessary or greatly helps you to win the game. You have to stand in the circle to get the lasers to shoot. Even worse, I think probably the worst example I could think about this topic, this point, is Greymane. The character Greymane. Gen Greymane, the character in HOTS. I swear to God, I am not lying. When, I believe the first time they said this was when Greymane got banned. And I don't remember who said it. But they literally said, they were talking about the characters, and they were like, we have this great and diverse cast. And then somebody said, like Greymane, who was just banned, he's a werewolf. That was the only thing they said about Greymane. He is a werewolf. Who fucking cares if Worgen are actually werewolves? That's not the point. They don't... They could have explained why he was a good pick to ban. They could explain why the character is powerful. They could explain... Look, Greymane is a good character to ban because not only does he have ranged, which is really good in a lot of team fights to stay away from those melee characters that do a lot of damage, but he also can shift into a melee form and do even more damage. And he has an ultimate ability that is really dangerous. And if he kills somebody with it, he can do it again. Was that too complicated of what I just fucking said? Imagine you're not even a video game player, but you're watching this, and you see them ban out Greymane, and you hear somebody say, oh, that was a good pick, because Greymane's a very powerful character. He can stay at range and shoot other characters so that they don't get close to them and do damage to him, because he doesn't have a lot of health. His defenses are not that great. So it's good that he can stay at range and fight other characters, but if he needs to, he can transform into a werewolf and charge in and fight melee and do a lot of extra damage. And that's where he becomes his truly deadliest. If you heard that, would your mind just be like, what the fuck? I don't know what I'm fucking doing. Video games, what? And just slit your throat. It's perfectly fucking reasonable. They did this all the time. Standing in the circle to get the lasers to shoot. Greymane, he's a werewolf. Rhaegar, he can turn into a ghost wolf. And I swear to God, in the finals, they said, Rhaegar could turn into a ghost wolf, but ghost wolves aren't faster than horses. They were trying to explain the mount system. The fact that they had to even explain the mount system, they segued into talking about the mount system to say, Rhaegar can turn into a ghost wolf, but ghost wolf isn't faster than horses. I mean, the fuck? They could have just said, we have a mount system that players can use to travel faster. They didn't say that. They didn't say that. They didn't even bring up the fact that there are more than fucking horses in the game. If they're gonna make a fucking joke saying faster than horses, it could have been like faster than unicorns, which are one of the mounts in our game. Isn't that cool? Don't you want to ride the fucking unicorn as a little fucking murloc or whatever? It's just... I almost like threw up there because I was so fucking disgusted with that whole topic. It's dumbing down to the game to such a ridiculous level that it's like an insult to actual fans. And it's, once again, cool, awesome. Try to get more people into the game. Heroes fucking sucks as a game and needs more players because it's bad and it's not balanced and it's a terrible pricing system. And I know, Blizzard, that all you care about now are the games that make you a lot of money, like Overwatch and Heroes and Hearthstone. But cool, try to get more people into that. I like went on like a mini tangent there. Anyway, cool, try to get more players into Heroes of the Storm. But don't sit there and like take a giant shit on my face as a fan by being so fucking like disrespectful to your own property. It was so weird. It was like really, really weird to me, and I didn't understand why they went so far back with it. Because they didn't do that last year. Was there like some great uproar about people not understanding what was going on last year? There were people still saying they weren't understanding what was going on this year. I was watching the Twitter hashtag live as it was happening, so it didn't fucking do anything. So why would you do that? Like, why would you treat your property with such like disrespect? It was really odd. And there were a bunch of other examples I could have gone into this point, like them describing... I believe they described heroic abilities as the most powerful of abilities. Or that actually would make sense, but they said something like, heroic abilities are the best ones. And that was it. I was like, you didn't even bother to explain that you can pick one or two, and each of them can change up the dynamic. That's not too complicated. They acted like the ESPN viewer was fucking stupid. That they were like mentally deficient, and they couldn't like handle the fact that there were like nuances in this game that you had to learn to be good at it. They couldn't like be bothered to explain that. But at the same time, then turning around and going, this is a legitimate esport. It didn't fucking make any sense. So that's Nostalrius. I'm on board with Blizzard. I totally support what they're doing, especially after I saw all these fucking children come out. These children who are adults come out and like circle jerk about how great this was, or how bad it was. And I really didn't like Heroes of the Dorm. In fact, if they partner with ESPN next year, which they probably will, I probably won't end up watching it. I'll fill out the brackets so I get the free shit on whatever game they're promoting, cross-promoting it on. I'll fill out the brackets to get the free fucking portrait that I'll never use in Heroes of the Storm. But I can't... I probably watched like the tournaments leading up to that because they actually used the good UI, and the casters don't act like they're fucking retarded and have to like talk down to it like their player base or the watchers like they're 4-year-olds. But if it comes to if it's on ESP again, I'll like give it a shot. I'll watch the Final Four, but if they start that, I'll probably just turn it off. And it's just it's like the same thing as the same kind of like the soul of a point that Tracer's removal of her pose was. It was like trying to placate this mythical group that I don't think exists. I don't think there's like this giant group of people who are watching ESPN2 or ESPN University Sports. I don't think there's even like one person who watched that and went, wow, I really want to play the game with that fairy dragon fighting that devil guy. Or I want to play the game where that fish man fights that spider lady. Like, I don't know anybody. I don't know a single person. The hashtag, while I was watching the ESPNU, the ESPN2, and the Heroes of the Dorm hashtag, I never saw a single person who didn't play the game watching this and going, wow, I really want to play the game now. Mostly it was about esports being on ESPN. And fine, I'm not glad, but I don't give a shit if it's on ESPN2. If it's on it, great. If you like the fact that it's on ESPN2, fucking good for you. Good. I'm so glad that you're happy that people are treating esports like a legitimate sport. My opinion is, and this is what Howie has echoed as well, him and I were talking about like this entire Nostalrius and Heroes of the Dorm for like days and days now. So, I don't want to say these are all just my thoughts. These are my thoughts along with the vigorous discussion Howie and I have been having over the last couple of days, where I refined some of my points based on his feedback, and I've adopted some of his points because I agree with them. So I just want to put that out there as well. Didn't want to forget to put that out there. But Howie and I were talking about it, and he made the point, like the brilliant point, I think. And I believe, is my Skype up? It is, but I don't think... Yeah, it's too far back up my Skype history, but I believe he said something to the effect of, I don't know why Blizzard is trying so hard to capture the cable TV watching audience when it's blatantly clear that the internet has already surpassed that in, like, every way. I mean, there's a reason that the copyright, to get back to copyright in, like, a different vein, there's a reason that copyright strikes and stuff like that on YouTube are so prevalent, and how on the internet are so prevalent, and how Twitch has to, like, tiptoe around this idea about intellectual property. Because the internet has blown cable TV out of the fucking water. It's blown it away in, like, every possible metric you could use. I don't know why Blizzard was, like, so fucking damn set on trying to get these people who like college sports, or who are, like, 50, 60-year-old guys watching the NFL. They're not gonna fucking play Heroes of the Storm. They're not. They're not gonna do it. You're chasing an imaginary dragon while shitting on the people who actually like your game. And at least kind of like it, or at least try to like it. Like, I try to like it, I don't, but it's a fun thing to play with other friends. But you're shitting on people who are already fans of your game to appease this group that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, in my opinion. I have seen no demonstrable evidence that there's this mythical group of people who are not playing any video games who are going to see Heroes of the Storm and then go fucking install Heroes of the Storm. It's not happening. So, that's it. Leave all of your many thoughts about how wrong I am about everything I just said in the comments below. My name is Necroxis. I've been ranting for almost an hour. I need to take a fucking break and eat something. Water break. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm trying not to make the channel, like, just raging about stupid shit, but it's just, when stupid shit just keeps happening one after another, I can't help it. So, we'll get back to the fun stuff soon, I promise. I'm trying to record a Zuna gameplay on the alpha, but I fucking keep crashing every 20 minutes. So, if you're wondering why that's not out, that's the reason. So, if you watch this whole thing, thank you very much. Please, for the love of God, I guess if I'm saying this at the end of the video, it doesn't matter, but I hope that you watched the whole video before you made your comment. I mean, feel free to, like, take notes. I mean, this video is so fucking long, it's like a movie. Feel free to, like, take fucking notes if you want, and then comment afterward, but I think one of the goofiest things is when I get a bunch of people commenting on stuff that either I directly answer or I explain further later on in the video, but they're just like, they post their comment and just post it, and then they have to come back and make another comment, or make another comment, because I keep fucking explaining what they're asking, or what their point is. That's just advice in general. Listen to the entire thing somebody says before you fucking comment on it. Alright? Thanks for watching, everyone. If you watched this far, I thank you very much. And I'll see you guys next time. Stay awesome. And, yeah, farewell.